Welcome to Talking with the Animals, an exploration of animal communication. Join Animal Communicator, craniosacral therapist, and NES practitioner Caroline Pope as she discusses how to understand other species as they truly are, not just from the human perspective. That's right, Mecco. Discover how communicating with our four-legged friends can open up a whole new world for both of you. And now, your host and Australia's most recognized and well-known animal communicator, Caroline Pope.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking with the Animals. I'm your host, Caroline Pope. Thank you for joining me. It's hard to believe that I've now been a professional animal communicator for over 26 years. Don't know where that's gone. I'd like to thank each and every one of you that has helped me along this journey. I hope I've been able to be of service to you, and stick around because at the end of this episode, I'm making a special discount offer to my clients. Reflecting back on 26 years, it's interesting to see how much has changed in the field, not only of animal communication, but I think of the way we tend to look at our animals in general. I started back pre-internet, and yes, we did exist before that for some people. I know some people, younger generation, sort of struggle a little to understand that we did all survive without internet, but we did. And one of the things I found interesting when I started, in those days, of course, everyone would have to snail mail photographs to me to my PO box. And what I found to start with was I could read off a photograph, not a problem. But if someone printed that photograph out or I had to work on a computer, I really struggled. Now, of course, it's all just, no one sends a photo anymore. I can't think of anyone in the last 10 years that sent a photo, but it really does show just how much has changed. Certainly the veterinary world, in comparison with where we were back in the day, that's changed a lot, which is fabulous. I'm really, really pleased and honoured to say I work with multiple vets, and it's not unusual for a vet to call me. Often I'll be on the road and say, can we, we're really stuck here, need something quickly. They'll take a happy pic and send it through SMS, and I'll open it up and look at it and keep driving and doing a three-way conversation. I'm a woman, I can multitask. But of course, none of this, the technology for it all, wouldn't have been available 30 years ago either. But it's so nice to see that as things have advanced, vets have embraced communication. I'm really grateful for that because no one person can fix everything, and often there's that unknown factor. And particularly with homeopaths and holistic vets do say, for example, traditional Chinese medicine, if they're tossing up between a couple of remedies and the dog can say it's worse with wind or it's worse with damp or whatever, that can be the difference for a holistic practitioner between choosing one of a couple of different remedies that they've been tossing up. So just, they're not, well, I guess you tend to think of them as small, but if it's nailing the absolute right medication for an animal, it can be quite a big thing. Owners have changed expectation, I think, in the last 20, 25 years. I think, and don't quote me, but I think it was Philadelphia back in, I think it was around about 2000, changed the word owner to guardian. And that set off a lot of people thinking, and a big change in the dumpage rates of pets, because if you are a guardian of an animal, that certainly puts a different slant on it to an owner. And of course, now pets are also recognised in many countries as sentient beings and have more protection around them, which is fabulous to see. Some people are waking up to the fact that animals in laboratories, animal experimentation, and so forth is cruel and unnecessary. And they're different species, so the results are going to be different anyway. So it really doesn't help any of us, as well as being extremely unfair. I have spoken to a couple of these animals. I've actually had to rehouse a couple of dogs on the side after they've been used in laboratories, and they were just what the dogs were telling me. There's very few things I can't handle, but that one I had to shut them down. I just couldn't deal with it. But the fact that people are starting to wake up about this really does give me hope, as does in the last 15 to 20 years in particular. I think pounds have done a hell of a lot. There's a lot I still don't agree with. Don't even start me on desexing early, removing all the hormones. To me, that's just barbaric, leads to a bunch of problems, which is why, sadly, I personally won't be able to get another dog from a shelter. But, they really are starting to step up in general. I mean, in Europe, they've done wonderful jobs. Not so great in the UK. Here in Australia and America, not so much. There are plenty of good people trying their heart out, but unfortunately, people just don't seem to be prepared in a lot of cases to take responsibility. And I completely understand in the housing crisis. One of my favourite clients, I was just gutted I couldn't do anything for the animal, but she was a domestic violence survivor. She was sleeping in her car with her children. She couldn't get a home because of the housing crisis. And as she said to me, Caroline, the back seat has the children, the front seat has me, the back, that she had a station wagon, had all their belongings. That was all they had. There was nowhere for the dog. And I do believe that particular shelter was able to rehouse that dog. And there are some truly tragic and gutting decisions that people have to make. That's different. But so many people now, it's hard to get a house, or I want to go on holiday and I don't want to have to pay kenneling fees, so therefore I'll dump the dog. And unfortunately, particularly up around the mountains in a couple of places in Victoria, and I've no doubt it's everywhere, people will just dump the dogs and not even leave them at a shelter, which is just barbaric. And near the Balti Bridge is a place where a lot of the international students dump rabbits. So although we are taking steps in the right direction there, unfortunately, I'm still seeing a lot. And that's the thing. A rabbit is also, has just as many rights in my mind as a dog or a cat. But because they're smaller and they're cheaper, we tend to treat them as lesser beings or convenience. And I completely understand the financial issues around pet ownership at the moment. There are some programs and that can help, and many vets, if they know you're genuine, will allow you to pay them off. But please don't leave an animal to suffer. I mean, there was that case where the woman let a dog get maggot infested with some sort of tumour and then put it in a cage and threw it over a cliff and tried to call that euthanasia. Unfortunately, the dog suffered a lot, and fortunately for the dog, someone found it, and that was helping. At least it got to a vet clinic, but of course she didn't get any jail time, because our laws around animal cruelty in this country, to me at least, seem to be a joke. And whilst I have no time at all for the RSPCA, I am the first to say that if the laws aren't stringent and the judiciary aren't prosecuting, there's not a lot they can do. Kind of ironic when you think that we've passed the law that they are sentient beings. COVID was an interesting time. It certainly, for a lot of people, it brought up pet ownership and dogs because people wanted to get out. They realised the joys of dogs. And I've seen many, many dogs adopted from pounds and stuff that through COVID that now have a wonderful life. Of course, there's also the backlash, and talking to a dog yesterday, it said to me, you're pretty much losing a generation of dogs that are being euthanized that were got for COVID, bred for COVID, or bred through COVID, people adopted, and then it's all too hard, or the dog's got behavioural problems. Nothing in the dog's world or the dog had done had changed. What had changed was the people's behaviour. And unfortunately, there were a lot of people that were quite happy to have them through COVID and then decided it was all too hard. And I think this speaks, as humans, we tend to be more disposable. And I don't know, one dog once said to me, we are not Tamagotchis. And this whole thing like that show Farm, or I think it's a video game or something, Farmville, computer animated stuff. And people tend to think of their pets along the similar sorts of lines. And many animals have said to me, I'm not a convenience. Yeah, animals understand you need to do overtime. These days, cost of living, we're having to do 2 and 3 jobs often to keep the proverbial roof over your head. And that's fine. And I understand you're tired, but your dog's been waiting for you all day. They've had no stimulation. They're stressed because they're isolated. Sometimes we've just got to push and make that effort for them. They do appreciate, but it's often, yes, it can be very difficult for you, but it's also equally difficult on your animal. COVID also brought a lot of what they called isolation puppies because they weren't able to do puppy school for obvious reasons. And there's been a lot of issues around training. Now, I'm the first to say I'm really glad I didn't have a puppy during COVID. I took on an adult, but not a pup. And yes, there's a lot. However, to me, people just, it seems to be the convenient excuse now. Oh, it's a COVID puppy. Yeah, well, you're not putting in daily training. And this is it. A well-behaved dog and a well-socialised dog takes continual and ongoing effort. The dogs are just as confused, if not more so than you. And people say, oh, but yeah, we did this yesterday. Yes, but yesterday the smells were different, or the person was different, or the dog was different. So from the dog's perspective, it is something different. And this is, I'm seeing a lot, and horses also during COVID. Those of us that are lucky enough to have horses, most of us spent a fair bit of time down the horse paddock if we could during COVID. That was our sanity break. And the horses got quite fit. And of course then now, those of us that can still keep horses are doing an awful lot more work just to be able to keep them. And often some humans are going without so much just to keep their horse. And I truly admire these people. But of course, the result of that is quite often when you do get down there, you're too tired to interact as much or ride as much or do whatever. And, you know, the horses do feel this and notice it as well. So if you are one of these people, and I truly admire them, explain to the horse why you're too tired. They do understand. People's expectations, I believe, have changed a lot as well, unfortunately. I think we're a lot more unrealistic than we used to be. Once upon a time, people would, I know my grandfather's time, he used to talk about you'd leave your dog or you'd leave your dog and the hat, because in those days gentlemen always wore hats, on the bench. You'd go off to, might be at the cricket to get a drink or whatever, you'd come back and everybody would know that was your seat because the hat was there and you didn't touch people's dogs because there was every chance you'd get bitten. The dog knew its job. These days, we do seem to be a little more unrealistic. Parents don't seem as many of the times to be looking at the fact that it's not a right to pat a dog, and you really do need to be on top of your children when they're out, and if you have a dog at home all the time. I've seen several dog bites in the last month or two where kids have knocked the dog or the toys slammed into the dog or whatever when the dog's been asleep. Now, I'm the first to say I'd imagine being a parent isn't easy, but it's also your responsibility if you have a child and a dog to supervise at all times. And unfortunately, one of those dogs did pay the ultimate price for that. Yeah. Also, I'm seeing a lot more now of dogs. There was, I went out for my mother's birthday the other day and there was certainly two dogs there. Two small dogs. Owner had tied them up to the same post, threw some food, and there was this massive punch on. Though twice. The owners did nothing. I separated them. It's something that some dogs do enjoy, going out for the proverbial puppuccino, but many dogs I see are very, very stressed, particularly the smaller dogs. If you look at the world from where they are, being stood on would be, always something you'd be worried about, being crowded, being knocked, that kind of thing. And I think it's certainly in the last 15 years, there's a lot more expectations on dogs to be happy while people have breakfast. This isn't, of course, always the case. Some animals love it, but some don't. And people's expectations just seem to be that the dog's going to cope. And whilst many do, often those that don't, particularly the ones that internalise, they're the ones that then snap, literally sometimes as well as figuratively, and that's where we wind up with problems. The next leads me to the next bit, which really has changed in the last 26 years, is media. The media around the dog has changed a lot. There's a lot more media around dogs. I mean, once upon a time, it used to be mainly the racing industry, be it greyhound, horse, whatever. And whilst there's certainly still some around there, the protesters, the Nup to the Cup, Black Caviar's death and the fact that she had a foal every single year from when she was retired, all these sorts of things, and the fact that there are no ethical standards around what can be done with the broodmares at this stage. I believe Senator Gerard Rennick wrote and asked for something to be done about that. I'd like to say I thought it would be, but, I don't believe they will. But in general, there's a lot more. When I log on now to my Apple News in the morning, there's a section about dogs. There's a section about animals in general. So certainly we're getting a lot more media attention around animals, but some of it's good, some of it's bad, as with anything. I remember we're going back well before communicating, probably 40 years ago, when they were starting pets as therapy, and we were involved in obedience, and it was one of the very first school programs teaching children about dogs. And the gentleman that was in the club went to the media and said, "Do you want to report on this?" It's a really good way of teaching children, the same as I think as they did with recycling back in the day, how to handle a dog and that. And they went, "No." And he pretty much lost it and went, "So what if the dog snaps and bites a kid at school?" "Oh no, then we'd report on it." So yes, I don't think the media is always balanced. We do have some feel-good stories. There's a lot about dog bites in the media. And while some of them are tragic, most of them are people simply not having their dogs under control and not wanting to see the problems, turning a blind eye until the problem launches, and then everyone blames the dog. Unfortunately, we are seeing a lot of that. There was that poor woman that was attacked in Melbourne last week, and I believe is still in a critical condition, attacked by 3 dogs. Those dogs had attacked her, or she'd run screaming the week before. the dogs had also, I believe, been a problem to the neighbours' dogs. Now, if that's not showing you that there's a major problem, but again, it's easier for most people to turn a blind eye. And I do understand that that is human nature, but 2 of those dogs were shot by the police, which would have been traumatic for the police, traumatic for the people, and traumatic for the dogs. So no winners, simply because someone wasn't prepared to accept responsibility, accountability, and look after his animals properly. The whole thing is very sad. And unfortunately, we're leaning more towards that. Do I think there's more dog attacks now? Possibly a few more. Do I think the media are on it more? Absolutely. So people get this skewed view. And of course, in addition to that, we've got the cutesy and the fad factor. I mean, dogs in handbags a la Paris Hilton. And of course, now the poor old French bulldog is the in-flavour dog of the month in Hollywood. So everyone during COVID wanted a French bulldog. And these dogs have many, many spinal problems, breathing problems, all these sorts of things. And very few of them actually have a good quality of life. Not because the humans aren't looking after them, but because they can't breathe, have low oxygenation and massive joint and spinal pain. Most of them are both artificial insemination and Caesar. And I think we do need to have a look at that. I think as humans, we do have responsibility for this. The uprising in animal communicators, I think, is a really good thing. When I started 26 years ago, there were very few of us. It's also, I think there have been people that have been able to be a communicator in the past and now owning it more, whereas once upon a time when I started, it was something, I've no doubt there was a bunch of people out there that could do it and do it very well. But I don't think back in the day they were prepared to, come out and hang the proverbial shingle on the door, whereas now people are owning it. And I think that's fabulous. My only concern is, of course, as with anything, you get some really, really good ones. You get some not so good ones. And, I'm not knocking the tarot readers. Some of them can communicate quite well. But what does worry me with a lot of these people is they don't have any animal background or understanding at all. And if you're going to talk with animals and consult with people, to me, you really do need to have that background as well in order to be able to work with the vets and the chiros and the osteos and all the holistic and the behavioural and, because an animal communicator's a part of something, but no one person can fix everything. And you need to have that good referral list of things. And, I don't know that they all do. Having said that, I've met some absolutely fantastic ones that I just sit there shaking my head and going, it took me years to get to this, and they're just creaming it, which is wonderful, because the more of us there are out there, and there have now been, I believe, a couple of films that have mentioned animal communication. Now, okay, some of them have probably been making a bit of a joke of it, but 20 years ago, let alone 25 or 26, there's no way anyone in the media would have mentioned animal communication. It simply was completely unknown. So the fact that there are many, many people now that are aware of communication is wonderful. When I started, I had to explain myself every time. No one understood. Now people are Googling animal communicator or pet psychic. And that's wonderful, because at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, we are all connected. Every single one of us is connected, and not just to every human, but to every animal and being on the planet as well. And the more of us that can understand this and broadcast it, and the more humanity can understand it and embrace it, the better for all of us. As I said earlier in the podcast, I'd like to thank each and every one of you, all my clients over the 26 years, both in Australia and around the world. It's been an incredible journey, and I really hope I can do many years more of this. I would like to offer a $26 discount for the month of October, $1 for every year I've been practicing, to a 1-hour animal communication. So please, if you'd like to book, make sure you mention to me podcast discount, and I will automatically apply that to your communication session. As always, thank you for listening. Stay safe, and remember, when you can, talk with your animal.
Thank you for listening to Talking with the Animals. To learn more about Caroline and the services she provides, visit caroline-pope.com. You can also find her on Facebook at Caroline Pope Animal Communicator, CST, and NES Therapy. Are you ready to change the way you see your world and the animals in it? Well, we know his answer. Don't forget to subscribe, and see you next time.